The emergency alarm screamed through the crystal halls of the Galactic Council station. Admiral Jinho Park walked quickly down the bright corridors, his black military boots making sharp sounds on the smooth floor. He had never seen the alien leaders look so scared before. The meeting room was full of strange beings from across the galaxy. The tall, glass-like Vorthok people made sad musical sounds as they talked. Their crystal bodies were dim with fear. The Luminar floated above their seats like balls of bright light, but even they seemed less bright than usual. The insect-like Kroleks clicked their many arms together nervously. 17 worlds have fallen, said Council Leader Veltar, his 4 eyes blinking slowly. The Zephyrian Empire moves faster than we expected. Their ships are too strong. Their weapons cut through our shields like paper. Ginho stood at attention near the back of the room. Earth was the newest member of the Council, and most aliens still thought humans were just another weak species from a small planet. He watched as the alien leaders argued in their strange languages. The Andorian fleet was destroyed in less than 1 hour, reported a blue-skinned delegate. 500 ships, gone. The Zephyrians didn't even slow down. Commander Mina Kao stepped up beside Jinyo. She was small but tough, with scars on her hands from her time as a fighter pilot. They're really scared, she whispered to him. I've never seen them like this. The Kroleks representative, a creature that looked like a giant mantis, clicked its mouthparts together. The hive mind of Sector 7 went silent yesterday. 12 billion minds. Just ... nothing. The Zephyrians have weapons that can kill thoughts themselves. Jinho felt cold. He had read the reports, but hearing it from survivors was different. The Zephyrian Empire had appeared from the dark edge of the galaxy 5 years ago. They conquered worlds, not for resources or territory, but because they believed only the strongest species deserved to live. They had technology that seemed like magic to most galactic civilizations. Council Leader Veltar stood up on his 6 legs. We have one option left, the humans. The room went quiet. Then several aliens started talking at once, their voices full of doubt. Humans, they still use chemical rockets. Their weapons fire metal bullets. Metal bullets, they don't even have energy shields. Veltar raised one of his long arms. Yes, their technology is simple, but they have something we have lost. What could they possibly have? Asked the Luminar delegate, flickering with confusion. They know how to fight when they should lose. Jinho stepped forward. Earth accepts the Council's request for military aid. The room erupted in noise. Half the aliens seemed angry, half seemed relieved. The Vorthok made sounds like breaking glass. The Kroleks clicked so fast it sounded like rain on a roof. This is madness, said the blue-skinned delegate. Humans have been in space for less than 200 years. The Zephyrians have conquered civilizations that were old when our sons were young. Mina Kao moved to stand next to Ginho. Maybe that's exactly what we need. Fresh eyes. Fresh graves, more likely, muttered someone in the back. Veltar struck the floor with his walking stick, and the room went quiet again. The decision is made. Admiral Park, how many ships can Earth provide? Jinho had been hoping for more time to prepare, but time was something they didn't have. The Third Fleet is ready for immediate deployment. 200 ships, 40,000 crew members. The Kroleks representative made a sound like laughing, if insects could laugh. 200 ships against the Zephyrian Armada. They have thousands. Numbers aren't everything, Jinho said calmly. After the meeting, Jinho and Mina walked to the observation deck. Through the huge windows, they could see Earth's fleet preparing to leave. The ships looked small and plain next to the alien vessels, with their glowing hulls and elegant curves. Captain Hunley's destroyer, Soul's Pride, was getting ready for the long jump to the war zone. Jinho watched the crew loading supplies and checking weapons. These were good people, the best Earth had to offer. They were about to face an enemy that had destroyed civilizations millions of years old. Are we doing the right thing? Mina asked. Quietly, Jinho thought about his daughter back on Earth, about the billions of humans who were counting on them to keep the war from reaching home. The Council is right about one thing. We do know how to fight when we should lose. It's what humans do best. 3 days later, the human fleet launched. Their ships were smaller, slower, and less advanced than anything else in the galaxy. But they carried something the other species had forgotten after centuries of peace and prosperity. The knowledge that sometimes the only way to win is to be willing to lose everything. As the last human ship disappeared into hyperspace, Council Leader Veltar stood alone on the observation deck. Either we just saved the galaxy, he said to himself, or we just sent them all to die. In the darkness between stars, ancient sensors detected the movement of the human fleet. Deep in forgotten corners of space, old machines began to wake up for the first time in millions of years. Captain Sujin Nam stared at her screen as red dots filled the display. 50 Zephyrian warships moved toward Kepler Station like a wall of death. The enemy ships looked like metal daggers, sleek and perfect. Their formation was so precise it looked like a computer had arranged them. They're herding the Vorthok convoy toward the asteroid belt, reported her weapons officer, Lieutenant Taeho Kim. Classic trap formation. The Vorthok refugee ships were huge and slow, carrying millions of crystal people who had escaped from their destroyed homeworld. They couldn't fight, and they couldn't run. In 30 minutes, they would all be dead. All human ships. This is Busan Thunder, Sujin spoke into her radio. Forget everything they taught us at the academy. We're going to do something stupid. Captain Young Siko laughed from his cruiser, Jeju Guardian. I love stupid plans. What do you have in mind? Sujin looked at the perfect enemy formation. The Zephyrians fought like machines because they were machines. Their ships were controlled by artificial minds that calculated every possible battle outcome. They never made mistakes, but they also never expected chaos. Scatter formation. Every ship picks a random direction. Launch everything we have, but don't aim at their ships. Don't aim at their ships, asked Commander Dongwoo Park from the destroyer, Daegu's sword. Then what do we aim at? Space junk. Asteroids, their communication towers. I don't care. Just make it look crazy. The human fleet broke apart like water hitting rocks. Ships went in every direction, spinning and diving, in ways that made no tactical sense. The Zephyrian formation hesitated for just a moment. Their computer brains tried to process what they were seeing. Lieutenant Taeho Kim fired his fighter's engines and screamed toward the enemy fleet. His ship was tiny compared to the Zephyrian warships, but he wasn't trying to destroy them. He was heading straight for their main communication array. Taeho, what are you doing? Sujin shouted into her radio. Something my grandfather would understand, he replied. Sometimes you have to break the enemy's ears before you can beat them. His fighter slammed into the communication tower at full speed. The explosion was small, but it cut the connection between the Zephyrian ships for almost 10 seconds. 10 seconds, where their perfect coordination fell apart. That was all the humans needed. Captain Wu Jinbei brought his ship Guangzhou Storm up from underneath the enemy formation, using an asteroid as cover. His old nuclear missiles were slow and clumsy, but the Zephyrians weren't expecting them. They were scanning for energy weapons and plasma cannons, not chunks of metal with atomic warheads. All ships, play some music, Sujin ordered. Loud music. The human fleet began broadcasting Earth songs on every frequency. Rock music, classical symphonies, even children's lullabies flooded the radio waves. The Zephyrian computers tried to decode the signals, thinking they were some kind of battle code. Commander Minho Choi spun his ship like a dancer and fired his railguns at a floating piece of space debris. The metal chunks flew in all directions, creating a cloud of shrapnel that confused the enemy's sensors. This is insane, transmitted one of the Vorthok convoy captains. Your weapons are centuries behind theirs. Technology wins battles, replied Captain O, as he used his ship's gravity drive to sling himself around a small moon. But humans win wars. The Zephyrian ships tried to reform their perfect lines, but the humans kept doing impossible things. Captain So-Young Lee flew her destroyer, Incheon Valor, backward, while firing forward, using her rear engines to dodge enemy shots. Lieutenant Sung-Min Han dumped his ship's entire water supply into space, creating an ice cloud that reflected laser beams in random directions. But the real surprise came when the human ships suddenly stopped their chaotic dancing and moved together like they had planned it all along. They had been herding the Zephyrians into a trap of their own making. Now, Sujin shouted. Every human ship fired at the same time, but not at the enemy vessels. They fired at the asteroid belt itself. Thousands of tons of rock and metal exploded outward, creating a deadly storm of debris. The Zephyrian ships, caught in their rigid formation, couldn't adapt fast enough. Their perfect coordination became their weakness as they crashed into each other trying to avoid the flying rocks. Within minutes, the superior enemy force was running away, their ships damaged and their confidence broken. The Vorthok convoy was safe. How? Asked the alien convoy commander. How did you defeat ships so much more advanced than yours? Captain Nam looked at her crew. They were tired, scared, and covered in sweat. But they were smiling. We didn't fight their ships, she explained. We fought their expectations. They expected us to be logical. They expected us to follow rules. They expected us to fight like every other species in the galaxy. And you didn't. We fought like humans. Messy, crazy, unpredictable humans who learned to survive by being too stubborn to die when we should. News of the victory spread across Council space faster than light. For the first time in months, the alien civilizations felt something they had almost forgotten, hope. But in the deep corners of space, ancient machines detected the chaos of human warfare. Old programs began to run. Something that had been sleeping for millions of years started to wake up. Dr. Yoon-hee Shin wiped the ancient dust from the stone tablet with her soft brush. The ruins of Primaxes stretched around her like a dead city made of crystal and metal. This had been the first homeworld of the Galactic Council, destroyed so long ago that most aliens thought it was just a legend. Doctor, we should be careful, said Commander Jung-Woo Park, his hand resting on his weapon. The council said this place was dangerous. Yoon-hee looked up at him through her thick glasses. Everything worth finding is dangerous, Commander. That's what makes it worth finding. The chamber they stood in was huge and dark. Strange symbols covered the walls, glowing with a faint blue light that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. Yoon-hee had been studying these ruins for 3 months, and she was sure she had found something important. Look at this, she said, pointing her light at a section of wall. These symbols are older than any language in the Council database. They're from before the current galactic civilization began. Jun-Woo stepped closer, his boots crunching on the crystal fragments that covered the floor. What do they say? I'm not sure yet. The translation computer keeps giving me strange results. She held up her tablet, frowning at the screen. It talks about something called the Black Armada, and Children of War and Hope. Children of War and Hope, Jun-Woo repeated. That sounds like something humans would be called. Yoon-hee felt her heart speed up. That's exactly what I was thinking. Listen to this part. She touched her tablet and began to read slowly. When the Children of War and Hope take up arms among the stars, the Black Armada shall wake from its eternal vigil. The chamber suddenly grew brighter. The symbols on the walls began to glow more strongly, and a low humming sound filled the air. Dr. Jun-Woo said nervously, I think we should leave. But Yoon-hee wasn't listening. She was staring at new symbols that were appearing on the wall, writing themselves in letters of light. It's responding to us. The ruins are alive somehow. Her tablet began translating the new words. The sleepers stir. The ancient compact awakens. The children have come to the battle, and the watchers rise from their long dream. Far across the galaxy, Captain Minho Choi was having a boring day on patrol duty. His small scout ship, Daegu Scout, was checking the dead zone near the spiral arm, where nothing had lived for millions of years. "Scout 7 to command," he said into his radio. Another day of looking at empty space and dead rocks. Then his instruments began making noise. What in the world? Minho stared at his screens in confusion. Massive energy signatures were appearing out of nowhere. Ships the size of space stations were powering up in the darkness. "Command, this is Scout 7, he said, his voice shaking. "I'm detecting multiple contacts. Very large contacts. They're coming online from what looked like dead space." "Scout 7, confirm your reading," came the reply from headquarters. "We show nothing in your sector." Minho watched his screen as more and more signals appeared. Ships that had been dark and cold for so long that space dust covered them like blankets were suddenly blazing with power. "Command, I confirm. Something big is waking up out here. Multiple ships, bigger than anything in our database. They're old, really, really old." Back on Prime Axis, the ancient chamber was now bright as day. Yoon-hee read the new symbols as fast as they appeared. The Black Armada was the enforcement arm of the First Galactic Empire, she said excitedly. They were the strongest military force in the galaxy, but they disappeared 10 million years ago. Nobody knew why. "Maybe they had a good reason," Junwoo said, watching the walls pulse with light. "According to this, they put themselves to sleep. They were waiting for something, a signal that would tell them when to wake up." "What kind of signal?" Yoonhee's face went pale. "The arrival of a species that fights not for conquest, but for the right to exist freely. A species that wages war to protect hope itself." The humming sound grew louder, and Junwoo felt it in his bones. "Doctor, I really think we need to get out of here." But the exit had sealed itself. The chamber was now completely closed, and the symbols on the walls were moving faster than Yoon-hee could read them. "The Black Armada sees all," she translated. "They know the children of war and hope have entered the cosmic battlefield. The conditions of awakening are met. The long sleep ends now." Across the galaxy, monitoring stations began detecting the impossible. Ships that were older than recorded history were coming online, in dead sectors everywhere. The vessels were huge and black, their hulls covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly. Captain So-Young Lee was the first to see one up close. Her destroyer, Incheon Valor, was on routine patrol when space itself seemed to tear open in front of her. "All stop," she ordered. "What is that thing?" The ship that emerged from the darkness was 3 kilometers long and black as the space between stars. It moved without engines, without any visible means of propulsion. Strange lights moved under its hull like veins carrying liquid fire. "Captain," her communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission. It's not in any known language." The voice that came through their speakers was like thunder made of whispers. "The children have come to the battle. The Black Armada wakes. Let all who hear this know. The ancient compact is fulfilled." So-Young stared at the impossible ship as it glided past them without slowing down. More ships were appearing from the darkness, all heading toward the center of the galaxy, where the Great War was being fought. On Prime Axis, the chamber went dark again. Yoon-hee and Junwoo found themselves standing in silence, the exit door open. Once more. Dr. Junwoo said quietly, "What have we done?" Yoon-hee looked at her tablet, which now showed a final message. "The Watchers have awakened. The galaxy will be judged by the strength of its spirit, not the power of its weapons." High above them, ancient ships moved through the stars like dark angels of judgment, heading toward a war that was about to change completely. Admiral Jinho Park stared at the tactical display with growing horror. Red dots appeared across the galaxy map like a spreading disease. Each dot was a ship larger than any space station he had ever seen. "Sir, we're getting reports from every sector," said his communications officer, Lieutenant Hay-1U. "The alien fleets are being destroyed, both Council forces and Zephyrian ships. These new vessels aren't picking sides." Jinho watched as another friendly signal disappeared from the screen. The Vorthok Third Fleet, gone in seconds. The Luminor defense grid, wiped out without a trace. Whatever these black ships were, they had weapons that made everything else look like toys. "What about our ships?" he asked. Hay-1 checked her reports. "That's the strange part, sir. Every human vessel reports the same thing. The black ships ignore them completely. They fly right past our fleets like we're not even there." Across the galaxy, Captain So-Young Lee watched one of the massive black ships glide past her destroyer, Inshan Valor. The alien vessel was so close she could see strange patterns moving on its dark hull, like living shadows. "Tactical. Why aren't they shooting at us?" she asked. Her weapons officer, Lieutenant Sung-Min Han, shook his head. "I don't know, Captain. They're destroying everything else, but they act like we're invisible." On the bridge of the Soul's Pride, Captain Hyun-Lee was having the same experience. A black ship the size of a city had passed within a few hundred meters of his destroyer, close enough that he could feel its gravity pull on his vessel. "Captain, I'm picking up a transmission," his communications officer reported. "It's coming from all the black ships at once." The voice that filled the bridge was ancient and terrible. Like the sound of dying stars, "I am Void Admiral Kethmorin, commander of the Black Armada. For 10 million cycles, we have waited in the darkness between worlds. The awakening condition has been met." Jinho felt cold. Awakening condition. The children of war and hope have entered the cosmic battlefield. The voice continued. "We have watched them fight not for conquest, but for the right to exist freely. They wage war to preserve hope itself, as we once did." Commander Young-Si was close enough to one of the black ships to see details on its hull. Strange symbols covered the metal like scars, and he could swear he saw faces in the patterns. The faces of an ancient species that had chosen exile over surrender. "All human vessels," the voice of Kethmorin echoed across space. "You are recognized as kindred spirits. You carry the fire that once burned in our hearts. We will not harm you. But the others," Jinho whispered, as if hearing his thoughts. Kethmorin's voice grew colder. "The others have grown soft. They hide behind their councils and their rules. They have forgotten what it means to fight for something greater than yourself. They must be reminded." Captain Wu Jinbei watched in horror from his ship Guangzhou Peacekeeper as a black vessel approached a Zephyrian battle group. The enemy ships, which had seemed invincible just weeks ago, fired everything they had at the ancient ship. The weapons passed through the black hull like it was made of shadow. Then the black ship fired back. The beam that came from its weapons was not light or energy. It was darkness itself, and wherever it touched, matter simply stopped existing. The entire Zephyrian fleet vanished in an instant, not destroyed but erased from reality. "My God," Wu Jin breathed. "What are these things?" Commander Minho Choi was monitoring the communications channels when he heard Council Leader Veltar's desperate transmission. "To any ships receiving this message, the Black Armada is destroying everything. They're not conquering worlds, they're sterilizing them. Entire civilizations are just ... gone." But even as the alien leader spoke, a black ship appeared near the council station. Veltar's transmission cut to static. Dr. Yoon Hye-shin was still on Premaxis, studying the ancient ruins, when she found the answer. "Commander Park, look at this," she called excitedly. "I found more text about the Black Armada." Junwoo read, over her shoulder, as she translated. They were the military arm of the First Galactic Empire, but they rebelled against their own government when it became corrupt and oppressive. Instead of taking over, they chose exile. They put themselves to sleep rather than rule over people who didn't want to be free. So they're not evil. No, Yoon-hee said slowly. They're like us. They believe that freedom is worth more than safety. That's why they're sparing human ships. They see us as the same kind of people they used to be. Back in space, Admiral Jin-ho Park made a decision that would change everything. He opened a channel to all human ships. This is Admiral Park to all vessels. Do not engage the Black Armada. I repeat, do not fire on the black ships. Sir, asked Captain Do-hyun Lim from the Olsen Defender, what are your orders? Jin-ho looked at the display showing the systematic destruction of two great galactic powers. The Zephyrian Empire, which had terrorized the galaxy for years, was being wiped out ship by ship. The Galactic Council, which had ruled for thousands of years, was falling apart as its fleets disappeared. We're going to do what humans do best, he said. We're going to try to save everyone, even if it kills us. In the darkness of space, Void Admiral Kethmorin sensed the human admiral's intentions. For the first time in 10 million years, the ancient warrior felt something like hope. Perhaps these young humans could succeed where his people had failed. Perhaps they could find a way to preserve both freedom and peace. But first, the galaxy had to learn a hard lesson about the price of forgetting how to fight for what matters. Admiral Jin-ho Park's small shuttle looked like a toy next to the massive black dreadnought. The ancient ship was so large that its shadow covered 3 moons. Strange lights moved under its dark hull like the blood vessels of some giant creature. Are you sure about this, Admiral? Asked Dr. Ji-won Kong, the galaxy's best expert on alien minds. Her hands shook as she held her translation device. No, Jin-ho replied honestly, but sometimes the only way forward is through the dark. Captain Do-hyun Lim sat in the pilot's seat, his face calm despite the danger. He had volunteered to fly this mission because he understood that someone had to try to make peace. Around them, the remains of 2 great fleets floated in space like metal graves. The shuttle docked with the black ship, and they stepped into corridors that seemed to be made of living shadow. The walls pulsed with a heartbeat older than human civilization. Ancient symbols glowed along the ceiling like stars in a night sky. Welcome, children of war and hope. The voice came from everywhere at once. Then the shadows gathered together and formed the shape of Void Admiral Kethmorin. He was tall and thin, made of darkness and starlight. His eyes were like dying suns, full of ancient sadness. You came, he said, and there was surprise in his voice. Even though you know we could destroy your entire species with a thought. That's exactly why we came, Jin-ho replied. Someone has to try to stop this killing. Kethmorin moved closer, and they could feel the cold of deep space radiating from him. Your ships are weak. Your weapons are primitive. Yet you sailed into a war between civilizations that existed before your son was born. Why? Dr. Kang stepped forward. Because that's what humans do. We fight for others, even when we can't win. As we once did, Kethmorin said quietly, before we grew tired of watching civilizations rise and fall, each one forgetting the lessons of the last. Captain Lim looked around the ancient corridor. How long have you been out here? 10 million of your years, the Void Admiral replied. We put ourselves to sleep rather than become the tyrants we had fought against. We waited for a sign that someone still remembered what freedom truly costs. And you think that's us? Jin-ho asked. You wage war to preserve hope itself. You fight not for conquest, but for the right of others to exist freely. Yes, you are what we have waited for. Around them, the ship's walls showed images of the galaxy. Burning Zephyrian fleets turned to dust. Council stations going dark forever. Billions of lives ending in seconds. But this has to stop, Dr. Kong said. You're destroying everything. Everything that has forgotten how to fight for what matters, Kethmorin corrected. The Zephyrians conquered because they believed might made right. The Council ruled because they thought order was more important than freedom. Both had to fall. What about the innocent people? Jinho demanded. The families, the children who never chose any of this. For the first time, the ancient warrior looked uncertain. In our time, we saved who we could, but perfect justice is impossible in war. Captain Lim had an idea. What if there was another way? What if humans could be the bridge between old and new? Explain. The galaxy needs to learn, not die, Lim said. Let us relocate the survivors. Let us teach them. Let us help them remember what you're trying to show them. Dr. Kong understood immediately. Humanity becomes the peacekeepers. We make sure no empire ever gets strong enough to threaten the smaller worlds again. Kethmoran was quiet for a long time. Around them, the ship's walls showed scenes of the ancient past, his people fighting against their own corrupt government, choosing exile over power, sleeping in the darkness between stars. You would take on this burden, he asked, to guard a galaxy that sees you as primitive newcomers. Someone has to, Ginho said simply, and maybe being newcomers is exactly what the galaxy needs right now. The negotiations took 7 days. Captain Wu Jinbei, of the Guangzhou Peacekeeper, served as witness while humanity crafted an agreement that would change everything. The Zephyrian Empire would be broken up, but its people would be relocated to new worlds, where they could learn to live without conquest. The Galactic Council would be reformed as a voluntary alliance of free worlds, with no power to force anyone to obey. Most importantly, humanity would receive advanced defensive technologies from the Black Armada. Not weapons of conquest, but shields and sensors to protect the weak from the strong. And you? Jinho asked. What happens to the Black Armada? We return to our long sleep, Kethmoran replied. But we will be watching. If the galaxy forgets this lesson, if new tyrants rise to threaten the innocent, we will wake again. As the ancient ships began to fade back into dark space, Void Admiral Kethmoran transmitted one final message to every human vessel. Remember, young warriors, the greatest weapon is not technology, but the spirit that refuses to surrender. Guard it well, for the galaxy depends on it now. Admiral Park watched the last black ship disappear into a fold in space itself. Around them, the galaxy was quiet. For the first time in years. No more Zephyrian war fleets. No more council demands. Just stars and planets, and the chance for something new to grow. Sir, asked Lieutenant Haewon Yu, what are your orders? Jinho looked at the tactical display, showing human ships scattered across the galaxy. 200 vessels to guard thousands of worlds. It seemed impossible. We do our job, he said. We keep the peace. We protect the innocent. We make sure this never happens again. The age of empires was over. The age of guardians had begun.